Hey guys, today we're going to be covering rust, weathered, and damaged effects. I've basically got two of these uh, nice little, I think they're like used for bases for Citadel, and all I've done is pretty much just cut them off the sprue and sprayed them. Now, when you guys do this, okay, don't do what I did because I pretty much did this pretty quickly. Make sure you prime it first. I've literally sprayed it just a Mechanica standard grey. Uh, Prime it properly, and then put your mechanic whatever kind of color you need on the base. Really, to be fair, you don't even need it to be a Mechanicus grey or anything. You could just spray the base coat a kind of Chaos Black or any kind of like Vallejo surface primer. That'd be brilliant. That's what you could start with. I just did this today just to kind of give you an example of what I'm going to be working on soon. So those are basically all the colours I was going to work through today, just up on the screen. I'll be going from them and I'll be showing you each thing I'll be doing anyway. I'll be stippling on loads of different colours, so you need a good kind of like fat brush like that really, especially for such a big area. If you're doing something quite small, then yeah, it's fine, you can stipple something little with a little brush. So I've got some Rhinox hide to start with, and I'm just going to generally kind of like give it a bit of a base coat on top of my Mechanica Standard Grey, just something to kind of work from. So I'm generally just being really messy with this, kind of rushing all of it. And like I said, guys, if you're gonna make sure you properly do it, prime it, because later in the video you'll see when I'm basically uh, rubbing off some of the actual paint to kind of get the effect. It goes through to the grey a bit, and even though it's not really that noticeable, it'd be nice if it didn't happen. All right, cool. They're done now, pretty much. Yeah, the Rhinox side. I just gave them a couple of coats. Now they've got some Typhus corrosion and our dry rust from Vallejo. Now, like I said in the last video, the dry rust is a much more kind of finer granules, and the GW1 is Typhus corrosion is a lot more kind of chunkier. So all I've done now is I've pretty much just chucked bits and bobs on it, all different all over it. So I think the slightly lighter bits tend to be the Vallejo one, the slightly darker ones, if you can make out, it's very slight. It's the Games Workshop one. Now, I just thought this would put a bit more texture, because all we're going to be doing now is we're going to be stippling on loads of different colours of reds and oranges to try and build up a kind of rust effect in the background. So when we basically put our final colour on top of it, it should look like the rust is coming through. So this is Doomball Brown. I thought it's quite a nice one because it's got a lot of red in it and it's got quite a bit of brown. So just going to get the good old stippling brush out and give it quite a heavy stipple. Now at this point, guys, you don't have to be tidy. Don't worry about it at all, because with all the colours we've got, we're going to be stippling up and down different colours. So if you do kind of put too much of one colour down and you're like, oh, wow, it's really bright and doesn't look rust at all, we can just stipple it back down again with a dark colour. So it doesn't really matter. Just have fun with it at this point. Now, just going back to the textured paints we used, uh, if you basically wanted something to be kind of really lightly weathered, then don't even worry about even using them, because you can basically just do a slight bit of damage there and it will show through the different colours and it won't have various layers to it and crusts. But then, on the other side of the spectrum, if you want to do something that's kind of really heavily weathered and it's been outside for years, we can build up different layers of different size of bits, or even use some kind of actual kind of like sands and glue them in place as well to make it look really weathered. Alright, cool. Now I'm using some Mephiston Red. It's a good base colour. I'm just going to stipple this, but a little bit more sparingly now. And when I first put it on, it does seem a bit bright. So I'm just going to chuck a bit of it around everywhere. And then after I basically put a few splotches down, I'm just going to take a little bit more off the brush and just move it around. And after a while, you can kind of see it kind of blending into the red below. And remember, guys, again, we can basically always darken it down with different colours to kind of make it blend in a bit more. And then ultimately, when we basically try to take off our final layer of paint to show through all the damage and rust effects, you can even basically just handpick where you want to take it off. So if you did have some bit that you really can't get the colour right on, it doesn't matter, no one will see it. Alright, cool. We're on our Fire Dragon Blight. Alright, this colour is pretty bright. So you'll notice I'm just going to stipple little bits and bobs here and then try and move shit into the colour previous again. Now I'm doing quite a few different stages to kind of pick up the rust colour here, but you don't have to, do, 4 or 5 different colours to kind of blend in rust. You can literally do any colour you want. You can even just keep it like a base kind of red or a brown if you want to just really keep it simple. And you can cut out all these different stages. Then also as well, you can make it even more complicated if you want to, by, like I said, adding more types of kind of grit and sand to it, and also adding different colours and different parts to it as well will basically make it change massively. Okay, cool. Now we've got our Morphine Brown and our dried bark. Now all I'm going to do is just put these two on the palette, and I'm just going to mix them up a little bit. So certain parts where I want a bit more of a darker brown, I'm just going to add a lot more of the dryad to it, and vice versa. Certain parts I want quite light, I'm basically going to add some of the Morphine Brown to. And I'm just stippling over the bits that I generally dislike, trying to break up certain parts of the red as well, so it's not like huge chunks of red, and just try to make it look a bit more, a bit more natural, I think probably the word. I always find it amazing that when you start a little painting project, you'll have all your paints sorted out into like rows or colours. Well, I do anyway. And by about 5 minutes into the project, I've got paints everywhere. You can see my little desk at the moment; it's really getting cluttered with paints around it, and I've only been here for I don't know about 10-15 minutes now. All right, look at it all done. Now, basically, let it dry for a good kind of like 5-10 minutes, half an hour, even if it's a bit cold. Because what we're going to be doing now is we're going to basically put our chipper medium on top. Now, I've got a Vallejo chipper medium, which I'm going to do for the little panel here. So I'm going to test that out. And I'm going to do the old kind of method here of this hairspray. And it's going to be on the bigger segment. Now you can watch me fail to take the lid off this chipper medium. It's the most powerful lid ever. There you go, cool. Now, I've seen a lot of people that use this in a airbrush to basically spread on. And if you've got an airbrush, yeah, totally recommend that because it will give a nice kind of like thin, even coat to it. Today I'm literally just using a normal hand brush on it. Now what we're doing is we're just going to cover the whole entire segment. Same again with the larger panel, just because it's going to be completely covered with the hairspray. We need it completely covered because what we're going to be doing next is we're going to be painting a colour directly on top of it again. and that is going to be the colour we're going to chip through to see all our base colours we've done now. So typically, imagine this is the base colour, and it's going to make it easier for us to basically peel whatever paint we put on top of it up. Oh, and that's done the hairspray. Super easy to spread on, let it dry. They're a little bit gloss at the moment, but they will dry a little bit more of a matte kind of satin finish when they're all done. Now, at this point, I left it out just to dry for about half an hour, and then the next clip now, I've pretty much sprayed them all just to Games Workshop white. Now, I only sprayed it white purely because it will show up the actual contrast of the colour beneath a bit more. Obviously, you paint them any kind of colour, that your army colour, or the colour of the tank, or the wall that you want to be rusted. Yeah, it's the reason why I did it so bright today. I've basically got a little toothpick now, and I'm just basically rubbing off the top layer of paint. But what I've done is I've basically applied a little bit of water to it. So I've let the your initial top coat of white dry, and then I've basically put a little bit of water on top of that. And now basically I'm just getting like a toothbrush, and I'm just kind of heavily stippling the brush over to kind of pick up and trying to take off parts of the paint. So every so often I'm basically just dipping the toothbrush back into the water again and going back over it. Generally the water will basically help seep into the actual top coat that we've given it now, which is just a white spray. Now basically I'm just really heavily kind of like annihilating this bit of kind of metal effect that we've kind of made. Normally if I was doing this I'd basically take a little bit more time with it, but I just wanted to show you guys how you can kind of get like a really easy kind of rusted effect. At this point you can basically build up as much damage as you want or as little as you'd like. Now typically probably for your tanks, which a lot of people will be using this for, you probably wouldn't want to make it this rusted or damaged, but for the video today I just really wanted to try and bring out as much as the background detail that we've done, so you can kind of see how the actual technique works. Alright, cool. I think I've annihilated that panel enough. All I've done now is pretty much just basically just washed it in a little bit of water, and I'm just going to let it dry out now. And onto the Vallejo, the little panel. Just going to do the same thing again. I'm basically just going to wear out, basically put some water on it, and then I'm just going to try and take off little bits and bobs. So the brush is generally the most lightest kind of way of doing it. So typically, if you want to kind of only take off small amounts, then the brush is going to be the easy kind of nice light way of doing that. And the toothpick's probably going to be the toughest one, the one that kind of like just tears straight through straight away. You can kind of like hand pick exactly where you want to kind of take and make your kind of like rust pockets, or even like scratches. It's pretty good for scratches. But for this now, I'm just going a bit mad with it because scratching it everywhere. So when I use the brush later, and the toothbrush, it'll basically just tear it up from all the little points I've made with small tears. Just noticing now about using a toothbrush with kind of brownie water. It kind of flicks everywhere, and how messy my workstation looks now. So it's a good thing to kind of bear in mind if you're doing this somewhere on like a kitchen table, or somewhere that you can't really get too messy. It's put something down beforehand. Otherwise, you might be in a bit of trouble. Now I'm just giving it a little wash just to kind of clear off all the kind of mucky water, and it's a good point now just to kind of pick out any other leftover bits you kind of want to do before it starts to dry. So I'm just getting a little cocktail stick now and just gonna do a few little tears here and there, just to try and stop it from looking so like uniform exactly. Whereas if it's like perfectly evenly damaged, which this does look quite evenly damaged just because I quickly kind of rushed through it today. Now you can see that's kind of the finished result. Now you can see a bit of the grey actually showing through as well, and that's because I didn't prime it properly at the beginning. So if you did like a proper primer, that would work, and it would give the actual paint something a bit more to stick to compared to just the Mechanica standard I sprayed on it. And I was also quite heavy-handed as well, and this one you can't see it as much. So to be a little bit more lighter with that as well, you can slowly kind of build up the texture. Typically I wouldn't use the white with this, just because I feel it's just too much of a brash contrast between the two of them. I would basically try to kind of like maybe dull it down, but because the light colours do work quite well to show up the rust, I thought it'd be good to show it today. All I'm adding now is a little bit of watered down Doomball, but any kind of like brown or kind of like browny reds will work quite well. Even some oranges as well. And I'm just basically doing little streaks from certain kind of damaged areas where you can kind of see like a nice pocket of rust like that bit there. Basically just running it down just to make it look like it's kind of been a bit more weathered. Now normally I wouldn't damage everything as damaged. You could damage like bits of it, and then you can do the kind of weather technique with the kind of the rust coming from it. And then you can actually kind of, when you're looking at a model, you can actually kind of see exactly where it is compared to this, which it's just damaged everywhere. So showing a couple little streaks to this, it's just an example, and you wouldn't really it wouldn't really stand out too much in a model because there's too much going on. Now, it's always better to basically water down the little rust streaks quite heavily at the beginning, and then you can just keep rebuilding up the same color again and again and again, the more inwards to the rust streak. So you can start by being quite wide with it, and then you can basically, as the water kind of disperse the rust, and then you can basically do the streak more heavily in the middle to kind of pick it up. So I think that's it, guys. Hopefully you can kind of see the idea of what I was trying to do. And you can kind of see the reason for stippling on the different colours at the beginning, because it kind of shows a bit more at the end. Alright, take care, guys.